Welcome back, everyone. I'd like to thank all of you for giving us this small little break for our technical check. We have now reconvened for our next session, which is SHG Bank Linkage Program and Impact. And it is my privilege to introduce the panelists for today's session. Dr. L.H. Manjunathan, Executive Director, SKDRDP. Mr. GVS Reddy, Managing Director, Srinidhi. Dr. Smita Premchandra, Founder, Sampark. This panel will be moderated by Mr. C.S. Reddy, CEO, AP Mars, and we are very grateful to the speakers for agreeing to our request to join us for this discussion. We are very excited for this discussion, and we look forward to it. Welcome again, and I now hand over the session to Mr. C.S. Reddy to initiate the conversation.
Good morning, and welcome to the panelists, and welcome to all the participants who have virtually joined this Inclusive Finance India Summit from all over the world. I am delighted to be moderating this session. Had the most wonderful keynote address by Mrs. Alka Upadhyay, very positive, very, forward-looking, very candid in what NRLM is able to achieve, not able to achieve. Now we have a very power-packed panel. In terms of the order of the speakers, I would first request Dr. Smita Premchandra to speak, to give her perspective in terms of the impact and the kind of women's empowerment that has happened. Then I would invite Dr. Manjunatha from the Sri Kshetra Dharmasthala Rural Development Program, Karnataka. He has some very unique experience of a business correspondent model with SHGs and federations and many other innovations there, including some enterprises that Alka mentioned. And then finally, I would invite Mr. Vidyasagar Reddy, who is the managing director. I would say founder and managing director of Srinidhi, a very unique and innovative enterprise owned by the SHG federations, providing supplementary financial services to the the SHGs and their federations in the state of Telangana. So before we go and invite the speakers to share their thoughts, the way I thought we would do this session is I would just say a few words based on what Mrs. Alka Upadhyay said and some opening points. And then each of you will get 10 minutes to speak. So in a way, I want to make sure that you have sufficient time to put forth your points of view. And this is not restricted to SHG bank linkage, or it's not restricted to financial inclusion. I think we are going way beyond. Then we will have a second round where each of you will come in and answer some specific questions that I would pose to each of you. So I would still hope that we will conclude by 11 o'clock. That's the time for this session. That's kind of, I hope all the panelists are okay with that. So at the outset, I want to really thank Access Development Services for giving us this opportunity of having this panel discussion on SHG bank linkage, the program and impact. This is, in my opinion, one of the most important sessions of this conference. And Vipin and his colleagues have been very, cooperative in helping AP Mars in curating this particular track. My colleague Ayana Krishna has been helping, and she's sitting in front of me. I thought I shared a few slides as part of the introduction when before Alka Upadhyay spoke, and I'm sure some of you have had a chance to listen to that. So number one, I think we are all very clear that SHG bank linkage is here to stay. It's a successful, in spite of some non-performing assets, in spite of some limitations of skewed, focus in terms of more South India, but increasingly going north, going east, going west. And the SHG federations are here to stay. And the push is more for SHGs to, take up micro enterprise and support the members to improve their incomes and economic security. And in the process, there is poverty reduction. So that's, I think, is kind of very, very significant. Also, the National Rural Livelihood Mission is steering this entire process and is able to work with the state rural livelihood missions and the entire government administration of the rural development. So I think and NABARD, I must acknowledge that they have played a very, very important and pivotal role in facilitating the SHG bank linkage. They have stayed with the program now under the leadership of Dr. Chintala. I hope there will be more emphasis on sustainability and looking at new innovative financial products for the SHGs, and there may be federations as well. So I'm kind of very optimistic. The NABARD's initiative of e-Shakti, of computerizing, digitizing the SHGs, is also a very novel and innovative initiative. And I hope we will universalize that, and NRLM and NABARD will work together in making that happen. I kind of raised some questions, and I want to maybe just repose those questions for the panelists, so that you are able to address some of those. I think in this particular panel, particularly quality and sustainability of the SHG system is something that I want you to maybe think about and address. There is a separate panel on microfinance to micro enterprises, so we don't have to spend too much time on that. I think impact is an interesting area of work, impact from poverty reduction or women's empowerment perspective. There is another session on SHG Federation, so I'm sure there it will be dealt with. Maybe some of us could also address issues related to the autonomy and independence of these SHGs and their federations. And I'm sure you have many other questions. So just to give you a minute summary of what Mrs. Alka Upadhyay said about the entire SHG system in the country. Number one, I think she talked about financial literacy being important for the women to take up micro enterprises, maybe enterprise management as well. I think second point she made is the social capital. The SHG movement in the country has developed a huge amount of social capital in the form of community resource persons, bank sathis or bank mitras, many other maybe 20, 30 varieties of social capital. How that social capital gets effectively utilized, I think is an important point for us to ponder over. There is also an emphasis that Mrs. Alka Upadhyay put on the whole idea of women's empowerment. How is it going to happen? What kind of role probably the NGOs that can play. I think one issue where maybe some discussion could take place is the SHG federations and farmer producer organizations. There is a tremendous possibility of synergies between these two types of institutions, and importantly, the role of women in the women leadership in the farmer producer organizations. So maybe I'll stop it there from my side. I'm again very delighted to have this panel, and to begin with, I would invite Dr. Smita Premchandar, a good old friend, part of our Enable network, which is about promoting self-reliance and self-sustainability of SHG movement in the country. Smita has been very deeply involved in Karnataka and across the country on SHG system. I don't think she needs big introduction. She has been a outspoken person, particularly from the SHGs and federations as agency for women's empowerment. How it has happened, what kind of might be some of the shortcomings in that. So I right away go ahead and invite Smita to speak, and you will have 10 minutes, Smita. Thank you very much for being on this panel.
Thank you, CS. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks again to Access, who every time they put up such a beautiful conference, and we're able to devote all the time and discuss all the positives and negatives and way forward that we can look at together. So this coalition that Access brings out every year is extremely important for all of us. I would like to add two things to my introduction. One is, of course, I'm a founder of Sampark, which is an NGO that works on women's empowerment and migrants' empowerment. But also, I am adjunct faculty at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, where I teach both microfinance and gender and development. So from both sides, microfinance, and women's empowerment, SHG bank linkage is central to what I discuss in class. And my third introduction is that I do a lot of work for UN agencies and other agencies across the world. Most notably, I would like to bring today not only lessons from India, but also Bangladesh, Nepal, and Myanmar. And, working with one of the biggest microfinance agents, NGO in the world, which is BRAC in Bangladesh. So these lessons are very important for us in India, not just because we have the biggest self-help group program and we need to make sure that that is very strong, but also because these lessons resonate very well from an Asian country to Indian. So what I will do is I will start by sharing some initial thoughts with you, and then whenever you have questions, then please post them and then we'll answer them. So I'm just sharing a few thoughts with you. Okay, so first thing is how impactful are SHGs? Of course, they are extremely powerful potential organizations. What have they actually achieved? And in order to do this, I use a framework which talks about, what are the livelihoods impacts, so assets and services, but also very importantly, how about voice, influence, and agency of women? Have we instrumentalized them, or has their agency also increased? This is very important. And the third thing, which normally we forget to pay attention to, but it's very important for empowerment, is to really see whether norms and structures in the organizations have changed. So these are very important: agency, structure, and relations, and how norms about women can be changed. And so I've collected the impacts for you in very, very short time, but I'm going to give you on all the three. Where are we? On economic impacts. Now, assume we cannot expect microfinance, small amounts of money, to have very big impact. So of course, microfinance has micro impacts, but those micro impacts are still very important for the household. So we do see improved savings. We do see credit access, we do see skills improvement, we do see women's increased labor force participation, and of course we see women use the money for emergency funds, for education, for cluster level activities and for economic activities. Now, the most important thing when it comes to savings, and it's always traditionally been called the forgotten half of microfinance. I think C.S. Reddy said it in the previous session once, but the amount of money that SHGs have saved in SHG bank linkage program is 26,500 crores, which is actually 25% of the 100,000 crores that they give out as loans, that is outstanding as loans. So, 30 years ago, SHGs used to be asked to place a deposit against which the loan would be given. Today, they have proven that even without asking, they save this money, and they're very highly creditworthy on that basis. Their capabilities have improved. Management and leadership has improved. Not only in the SHG. In SHG, even some problems still persist, but also at the community level. Women's voice decision-making at home has improved. Women are participating in community. They are attending more Gram Sabha meetings. Some of them are even standing for elections. And of course, through the NRLM program, they are also better linked to, and through VOs and cluster level federations, they are better linked to government schemes. So financial inclusion has also helped. And socially, there's a lot of increase in mobility of women. They have, a certain amount of social recognition. They even have political recognition, because come elections, almost everybody runs after SHGs, certainly in Andhra, certainly in Tamil Nadu, and also in Maharashtra, Mavim women have been able to negotiate with leaders to actually put the women's agendas up front. So these are important things. There has also been some evidence of reduced violence against women, but that's a little bit controversial, because sometimes also the violence increases. What are the missed opportunities? So I, just don't want to finish with a rosy picture, even though, and this, I think Alka Upadhyay ji accepted this very clearly. It's very much part of the NRLM evaluation report, which has come out in 2020. It's a very important report because it's a very candid report. And I'm glad that NRLM is actually looking at it so positively and taking things on board, because CIF funds, only 40.8% of SHGs have access to CIF, so to the community investment funds. And the difference between the higher quintile of income and the lower, 2.8 times is what the higher income SHGs get as loans compared to the younger ones, the poorer ones. Then in terms of capacities, 53% of SHGs and 10% of VOs had bookkeepers. The rest of them didn't. They don't. This is a basic thing under NRLM. How come this happened? Then 10% had community cadres to support SHGs. We talk about CRPs. It's such an integral part of NRLM. But the report clearly says only 10% had community cadres to support them, especially VOs and CLFs, the cluster level federations, had these cadres were not there. And 20% of the cluster level federations had livelihoods committees. So 28%. So that's really important. And then the other thing that we find is, regardless of what we talk about at the SHG level, for 20 years, and this conference itself has been happening for 15 years now, and 15 years, I think, at least I have been saying it also, some other people interested in federations. If we don't make federations a strong player in the market, this entire movement will pass us by, and women will still be stuck with 108,000 crores of credit. There's much more credit needed. The average for the SHG is much lower than the average for microfinance agencies. I think the average for the SHGs is somewhere around 20,000 and 20,000 rupees of credit per person, per member, per SHG. Whereas in the MFI model, it's easily 35%, 35,000 as an average. We're 16,000 short on the average. Why? That's because, and we have to remember that whatever we say about bank linkage and however good it is in the South, in general, banks still have to start trusting SHGs in a big way. Another thing about federations, we have zero agreement on institutional forms. Should they be NGOs? Mavim in Karnataka, Mavim in Maharashtra, in Kerala, they are registered as NGOs, trusts or societies. In Bengal, West Bengal, NRLM, they worked with the state government. They changed the entire act of cooperatives in the state. They registered them as cooperatives. But still, do we have confidence in the form of cooperatives? We don't. So in the institutional form itself, there are limitations about federations going forward. If we don't solve it, we are not going to reach scale. And then I was talking about norms of societies. So and so many thousands of SHGs. Only in 1 or 2 programs, it's the same Mavim, it's the same Kudumbashri, right? Has the attention to women's right to property been given? I remember FWWB used to give some attention and then it fell through because it wasn't succeeding. But I think as a women's movement, we really need to be, and CS started calling it movement from the minute he started speaking and said, I really want to call SHG a movement. But it will be a movement if we make major significant differences to women's empowerment. We are not going to do that if we don't start changing institutional norms and social norms. I just want to say a few things. I've already said that we need to build on this foundation. It's very strong, but we want to do, and you'll hear this in every session from this morning to this afternoon. We need to attend very strongly to livelihoods, and we need to do skilling. We need to do value chain development in SHGs. And it's not just FPOs is not the only solution. We actually need to bring livelihoods thinking in SHGs. I've given you an example on the right. It's a masala unit set up by a company called Vidhinya. There's women owned for women and so on. Not formulated as an FPO, but actually just starting to, yes. And we need more and more Vidhinyas. Vidhinya, for those who are in South India, would know that it means, a woman deciding her own destiny. And we need more and more women deciding their own destiny. So we need this kind of livelihoods movement also happening. Alka ji already mentioned in the morning, was very happy to hear from her that the NRLM is actually now taking very seriously the convergence of SHGs with local government institutions, especially the Panchayati Raj, and not only for government schemes, but also for rights. I think universal mobilization is a very important agenda of NRLM, and participatory identification of poverty is very important. They have made significant advances towards that, even though the evaluation report doesn't say it. But yeah, and then also we need to change regressive norms in society. I would end by saying that we need to navigate the balance between governmentalization and retaining independence, because a lot of SHGs have been governmentalized. I think the speakers after me will be able to also speak to the fact that NGOs have been marginalized. So unless you are a very big NGO and a very well-funded NGO, you have been crowded out by NRLM. And if that's the case, then we really have to think, how can SHGs and federations retain their independence? It's a very delicate balance. You have to align with NRLM to get any significant support. Okay. So I think there is no option but to continue to do capacity building of SHGs and forge linkages. Probably this is a good time to hear the other NGO speakers who will be able to speak to how important self-help promoting agencies are. Thank you, CS.
Thank you very much, Smita. That's lovely. You really gave a wonderful view, particularly from an impact perspective, from an empowerment perspective, from an agency perspective. So I think, still after 25 years of SHG system, only 50% of SHGs having a bookkeeper worries me, and it should worry everyone in the sector. And I'm sure we'll come back to some of these issues that you raised, Smita, about what can be the role of NGOs at this stage of the SHG system that has evolved. Without further delay, I would like to invite Dr. Manjunatha from the Sri Kshetra Dharmasthala Rural Development Program. Very innovative, maybe the largest outside the government system in the country, SHGs, and having a huge business correspondent system and a lot of innovations with focus on the micro enterprises. And I think a year ago, around December, I think 2019, I attended a huge international conference of SKDRDP in Bangalore. I remember, they showcasing their wonderful work, and Dr. Virendra Hegde was there all 3 days of the conference, and they really emphasized how religion and the self-help groups and their federations could kind of go together. So I'm delighted that Dr. Manjunatha is here to speak to us. And I request you to share all your excitement, your innovations, because it will immensely benefit the participants of the conference and the policymakers. Your time now, Manjunatha, for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Om Shri Manjunatha. Thank you, Mr. Reddy, and thank you, Access, for giving us this opportunity. I've just gone through the presentation sent by Access on the day's session. I've also seen through Madam Alka's presentation. I've also seen through Madam Smita's presentation. So I think you have set the tone very well. I think it's better for me to share the experience of SKDRDP rather than talk about philosophy of SHG movement. I think I'll do that actually. SKDRDP has been in SHG movement for almost 3 decades now. Our first group was started in 1991, and it was a Pragati Bandhu farmers group. Of course, later on we started promoting women's group as well. And currently we are acting as a kind of an alternative to the NRLM in Karnataka. We have promoted currently 5.5 lakh SHGs. Not all of them are women SHGs. We have different kinds of SHGs. We have women SHGs, which is the max, no doubt, and they get the NRLM interest subvention as well, although not the CIF fund, but they get the interest subvention. We also have men's groups, which are Pragati Bandhu farmers group. We have also young people group, those who are open for entrepreneurial activities. And we have ultra poor people groups who cannot actually take up any kind of livelihood activity. So put together, we have a basket of 5.5 lakh SHGs as on date. And we have actually, we are trying to prove certain myths myths in the SHG sector, which is to say that SHGs cannot get bank finance. Normally it's difficult to get bank finance. We as a hand-holding institution of SHG movement in Karnataka state, we have been able to negotiate with banks to get access to the SHGs for credit. And currently, some of my top gun SHGs get 25 lakhs as credit. And an individual entrepreneur, individual SHG member can access up to 5 lakhs under CDB scheme and access up to 3 lakhs under the normal banking scheme. So that if a member has completed 3 years in SHG group, and if the SHG grading is like S or A, they can get up to 3 lakhs per member. And we have also negotiated with the banks to change the system of lending itself. In fact, the first loan to the group comes at 12 weeks, flat 12 weeks after the promotion of the group, which is 50,000 for the group. And after 6 months, it will be 1.5 lakh rupees. And after 1.5 years, it's 3 lakh. And after 3 years, it's 5 lakhs. So the amount goes up. Another thing that we have changed in the system is to get to SHGs, cash credit limit. As you may be knowing, in 2012, the DFS had come out with this idea of giving cash credit limit to SHGs, and we have stuck to it. And today I'm very happy to say all the SHGs linked by SKDRP have only got cash credit. We don't have a savings account at all. So there was a question raised here as to people. I mean, the SHGs have 26,000 crore savings, and that is lying in a savings account which is not properly utilized. Now, because these SHGs in Karnataka have a cash credit account, their first withdrawals, the loans borrowed by the members, will be first going towards the savings only. So the savings are withdrawn first, and the cash credit limits are withdrawn later. Therefore, the savings are fully utilized. The current savings in Karnataka, managed by SKDRDP's BC operations, is in the form of 2,100 crore. And this 2,100 crore is earning them an interest of 14% for the group. So this is very, very, I mean, the biggest change that we have done. We have also negotiated with the banks for a 3 lakh rupee loan per member, which is also, I mean, normally, you know, in the Reserve Bank sector, it's in the MFI sector is 1.2 lakh, something like that. So it's much, if a member really wants to take up an entrepreneurial activity, he can definitely do with this. Another thing that we have changed is, for even in the MFI sector, even in banking sector, if somebody has to take a retail loan, let's say for an auto rickshaw, he has to bring his margin of 20%. And that will be, the auto rickshaw loan will only get for his chassis. And then he has to bring in for insurance, for other things. So therefore, ultimately, if an auto rickshaw costs 2 lakhs, he gets only 1,20,000. So he has to depend on other agencies to get that 80,000 rupees balance. But in an SHG movement, that person can get entire 2 lakh as a loan. So he can straight away from one window, he can get the entire auto done. So this is a change that we have brought in. We have also talked about sustainability. That's another question that has been raised in this forum. Now, sustainability of the movement, or sustainability of the operations, or sustainability of the SHGs. We have brought in sustainability at all levels. SHGs are sustainable because they are able to access funds easily. The movement itself is sustainable because we are acting as a business correspondent to different banks. We don't do retail lending ourselves. We actually hand over the SHG to the bank so that the bank lends to the SHGs, and we only get a commission for managing this entire operations end to end. That is promotion of the SHG, training these SHGs, lending to these SHGs, recovery of the money, and cash management as well. So all this put together, we get a commission from the bank, which is of course charged to the SHG, and that commission is passed on to us. So the entire operation today in Karnataka, the SHG movement is completely sustainable. Not a single rupee government funding required for this SHG movement in Karnataka because it's self-funded operation. Now the question will come, that means the cost of lending to the SHG would be much higher. Not so. Because of our negotiation strengths, because of the group that we have and the system that we have built, we have been able to negotiate with the banks to lend at the lowest rate to the SHG, which is equivalent to their base rate. Like say 7.2% in case of Bank of Baroda, 7.2 plus 5% SKDRP, which comes to something like 12.2. So now the SHGs linked to Bank of Baroda in Karnataka state, they are getting funds at 12.5. Now we have allowed a 1% margin to the group and asked the group to lend to the member at 13.5. So in Karnataka state, the SHGs are promoted by SKDRP, the members get loan at 14 and 13.5. And if there is a central government NRL interest subvention, they will get that. So it will ultimately be around 7.5%. So at this rate, a really BPL family is able to access funds more than 3 lakhs per member at that rate. So I think it's a very good model where institutional sustainability, operational sustainability also can be managed. So this way, SKDRP is the biggest BCBF SHG promoting institution, which has introduced several other social activities to strengthen the SHG movement. CS very clearly told that it is a spiritual, institution based out of a spiritual center. So we have used that as well as also as a strength to strengthen the SHG movement. So actually we are trying to act as an alternative to the government-driven NRL movement, where the last mile delivery is going to be a problem. Now, because of the SHG movement that which is out of the villages, out of the grassroots, we are able to reach to the last mile, last person through our workers who have risen from the bottom. So therefore, we are implementing several other government schemes. To say an example, Customer Service Center, which is the Agriculture Equipment Renting Center. We run one of the biggest agriculture equipment renting centers in Karnataka, running 165 centers. Perhaps only successful model in the entire country, run by the SHG movement. More than 2 million farmers getting the benefit of this customer service center. Like this, of course, I can go on. Several examples are there. But I think I'll stop at this. What I'm trying to say is that the civil society institution have a great capability to create sustainable institutions. An opportunity has to be given. Their voice has to be heard at various levels. And of course, we cannot work together to create similar institutions elsewhere. Like CS very clear, he pointed out this point that institutions like SKDRDP or MAVIM, these have to be actually taken on board to create similar such institutions, replicatory models elsewhere in the country. This is what I have to say. I think I'll stop at this. We can go for the Q&A later.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Manjunatha-ji. You really made my day. I think the National Rural Livelihood Mission has some tremendous learning possibilities at the SKDRDP. Just one thing I think, that you said, which really, I already knew, but you kind of reminded me again. The 3 lakh rupees per member, I think that's phenomenal. If we really want to finance enterprise livelihoods of the poor, we need to look at a loan sizes, not 10,000, not 20,000. Those days are gone. Cost of living has gone up. Labor costs have gone up. So I think 1 lakh and above, and we should look at that. So I'm delighted that you kind of mentioned about banks coming forward to give per SHG member loan size of 3 lakhs is phenomenal. And I think your holistic approach to agriculture, custom hiring, in a way, you already have that interface of SHGs and FPOs, in a way. So I think, Access should set up a meeting with NRLM, with all of us. This panel should meet, NRLM after the conference, physically or virtually, to really share some of these ideas. And I totally agree with you that for the National Rural Livelihood Mission, engaging with civil society organizations is critically important at this juncture to promote micro enterprises. Otherwise, it will become totally governmentalized, and even data quality will be one big challenge. SKDRDP is, in my opinion, like the Daan Foundation, SKDRDP, Pradhan. I think there are maybe 20, 30 agencies in the country still holding this SHG system together and doing a lot of innovations to achieve, go beyond poverty reduction, maybe poverty to prosperity. That seems to be the emphasis. And I really like your, brand of clothing of the SHGs in the SKDRDP. So I think you are doing maybe 100 things, not just one thing, with SHGs as the platform, as the institutional mechanism, as the institutional architecture. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. I'm sure it immensely benefited the conference participants who are virtually participating. So we will proceed on to Mr. Vidyasagar Reddy, in short known as GVS Reddy, who is the founder and CEO of Srinidhi, a community-owned financial institution providing financial services to the SHGs using technology platform. I also sit on the board of Srinidhi. I was involved in the conceptualization. So it gives me immense pleasure and satisfaction that it has become a national model for replication. And in fact, Government of India constituted a committee to study Srinidhi model for national replication, and a report was submitted. So there are again a number of innovations that Srinidhi has done. So I would invite Mr. GVS Reddy, who earlier worked with NABARD for a long time, and currently is I think now GVS for 8 years, you have been there as the managing director of Srinidhi. United Andhra Pradesh and now for Telangana. You are most welcome, and we are pleased and delighted to have you in this session, GVS.
Good morning, CS. Thank you for associating us. Good morning, the other co-panelists and the participants for today's meet. Also thankful to Access and Assist for inviting me to be on the panel. Really amazed to listen to the co-panelists and Madam Alkaji. The roadmap for SHG bank linkage. I've been with this movement for the more than now 2 decades. I think since 1999, I was associated with this movement. Yeah, there have been tremendous initiatives on the part of various stakeholders, and impact has been there, though may not be to the expected level. Yeah, there are still issues about scaling up, managing scale, the promotion of enterprises, the sustainability of SHGs and federations, and so on. I think policy needs to keep on evolving. I think this type of fora, I am sure, will be helpful in designing appropriate policies. On my part, I'll just like to cover very briefly on what Srinidhi does as a model. I think I can boldly say this is one of the unique institutions in the world. I am very confident and bold to say I repeat this. The simple reason that we have simplified the way SHGs access credit using the SHG federations as a last mile. I think that is a very key aspect in the entire approach. Now, just to give perspective about the organization, I think the assets under management now are to the tune of almost 3,500 crores. And we don't just extend credit, we also extend other financial services like insurance, including loan insurance, asset insurance, of course, asset insurance in coordination with the general insurance companies. Loan insurance on a mutual basis we do. In addition, we are also functioning as business correspondent to 2 major banks in the state. We have about 1100 VLEs or CSPs who are really earning handsome income every month. I think that's been a very good livelihood for them. In fact, a large number of them earn more than 30,000 rupees per month. I think sitting at home and doing this service, if they are able to earn that much, I think it is a real poverty alleviation with empowerment. So we have also integrated savings into this cooperative. Because it's a cooperative, we mobilize savings from members as well. So these savings also aggregate almost to 700 crores as on date. And our net worth has been around 1,000 crores now. It is a very, very strong, financially sound organization which has emerged in a span of 9 years' time. Today, we extend credit whenever a SHG member asks for it within 48 hours, the small loans part of it. And the larger size loans meant for income generation, which is the focus in the next session, we give within 15 days. The beauty of this is we digitalized the entire process of loan appraisal, then disbursement. We don't really use any paper for transactions. So completely technology based solutions are available to cover all aspects of our functioning. So just to touch upon what are the unique features of this. See, we supplement bank credit. You know that crisis was there in the state earlier, but so as an solution, we emerged as a supplement, an agency as a supplement to credit flow from banking sector to SHGs. So how do we ensure that coordination? See, we have been talking about this SHG bank linkage for the last 3 decades. 1992 onwards, if you really look at it, it's almost 3 decades now. So in the states like Telangana or Andhra Pradesh, who have been pioneers in this movement, in the early stages, the credit linkage still hovers around 35,000 rupees per individual. So when we look at it, the SHG as a system, whether it is preventing big ticket size loans for income generation is one aspect I think we have to really look at it. The second aspect is, as far as I know, at least in many states, the SHG loans are equally distributed. So this equal distribution of loans really does not serve any purpose because we are compelling all the members to borrow the loan. So I think within the SHG, we need to target individuals who are really in need of a loan. It is ironical, I should say, that all the members in a SHG requires loan at the same time. So I think that's a fallacious thinking. Definitely, I think we need to do something about this. So it is essential to target individual members, and over a period of time, every member will get a loan. It doesn't mean that only few will go on getting the loans. So obviously, I think that should be one feature we need to really look at it. So, but what are the unique features of Srinidhi? So when we said we coordinate with banks, we have evolved a mechanism where SHGs defaulting to banks cannot access loans from Srinidhi. So this credit discipline is very, very essential to enable them to access a higher amount of loans. How do we do? Yes, we have evolved a technological solution to it, and our system refuses to accept any request from SHGs which are defaulting to banks under SHG bank linkage program. So that in a way ensures recovery of both loans under bank linkage and Srinidhi, and it is a win-win for both of us. Now, the other important feature of Srinidhi is, so we use the SHG federations as last mile. So we are talking about sustainability of these organizations. Because we use the services of these federations, we pay almost 1.5% of the 11.5% interest that we charge on SHG loans. In a way, it's about 12% of the interest income that we earn. We share with the SHG federations both at village level and cluster level for monitoring the portfolio. it is a sizable income. I think in the last 5 years, we have paid almost 150 crores to these federations, which should really help them in strengthening the organizations. So far as empowerment is concerned, because this is a federation of, or the owners are the SHG federations themselves, aside government, so they have all the say in functioning of the Srinidhi as board members and also uh, as decision makers in the field. I am very happy to inform here that they are the real stakeholders and they have a say in decision making whether a SHG is to be given a loan or not. Of course, the financial viability of a activity will be assessed by the Trinity staff, but basic decisions whether to give a loan or not is taken by a SHG and the village federation, and a resolution is passed, then only this gets escalated to higher level for further processing. So the other important unique feature is about our technology. We have, I have already mentioned, nothing appears on papers, everything is digitalized, and as a part of this, we have provided tablet PCs to all the 20,000 village organizations, of course, on loan basis, and we have put a system wherein they are authenticated to prevent Benami lending, and then uh, the other process gets initiated. I am also very glad to inform you that we have digitalized about 100 project profiles of the common activities that are taken up by the SHGs. And in the tablet, if a SHG member asks for a particular type of loan, that project profile gets downloaded, and the job of the Srinidhi staff is to just assess the viability by asking a self-leading questionnaire which is loaded onto the project profile. I'm sure this will really help our staff in doing much better. Then, see, unlike any other financial institution, the uh, very important thing that we ensured is about end user loan. We have instituted social audit mechanism uh, into this financing. So, in a particular village on a random basis, social audit is also done to verify the assets finance, and that really ensures proper end use of the loans and facilitate income generation. Uh, yes, we are social enterprise, but with all this 11.5% interest that we charge, we pass on 1.5% to the village federations. So the effective rate is hardly about 10%, and we negotiate loans from banks almost at about 8%. So the margin is left is very little, but because our risk cost is low, we have been able to really perform very well, and we pay dividends to the stakeholders who are SHG federations, including government. And last year it was about 12%. So we have been increasing every year regularly. So I think this financial deepening. Now, to tell you here, Telangana, at least I can share with you, the loan outstanding is hardly about 2.5 lakh per SHG, and disbursement is about 3.5 lakh per SHG. I'm talking about on an average. So we have been pumping about 1.5 to 2 lakh loan per SHG, average size. But now I think this year onwards it will further increase, because as Mr. Dr. Manjunatha was telling, we also have a product of 3 lakh rupees per individual. So I think that will really enable them to take loans for income generation. Uh, so this is how they broadly, last year we clocked about 75 crore profit to just tell you. So we have been going from strength to strength, but I think there are more reforms are required, more particularly about the sustainability of SHGs, their rating mechanism. So this should be, my opinion is yes, we can create a platform of outside the state government, but then it requires funding regularly because it's not an easy job to sustain on a continuous basis. And the better way of doing it is self-financing every activity. So self-financing, yes, SHGs, the bookkeeping part, the digitalization of the records or bookkeeping at village level, the cluster level, integrating them, and overall rating, linking the loans to overall rating. I think all these really play very key role in augmenting credit flow to SHGs. My last point, which I want to make is Ms. Manjunatha was mentioning about how the convergence between an agency and banks really help in things. So I think the Reserve Bank should provide for a mechanism where banks can enter into contract with such type of agencies without leaving it to the discretion of banks, because some banks are looking for such type of policy guidance from Reserve Bank, and that will really help in taking the SHG movement forward with focus on livelihoods. So finally, I mentioned CS has already mentioned about the expert group. So expert group, it is representing Reserve Bank of India, NABARD, the Rural Development Department, and is headed by ex-finance secretary who is presently now the chairman of ICICI. And they have replicated this model for across the country. And the government has already written to about 10 state governments, assuring some seed capital or venture capital type of funding, almost about 100 crores or so, for commencing or for establishing this type of organizations in the country. So thank you, CS, for giving this opportunity, and I am very happy to be part of this meet.
Thank you very much, GVS Garu. That's wonderful. I'm really, when I think about, how did we come up with this panel, I kind of feel very, very delighted that we have such wonderful complementary panels. And all of you have been wonderful in keeping to time. So thank you very much. We have a few questions, so we'll do a round. But I do want to just take a minute to just mention that, it's nearly 30 years of SHG bank linkage. And I think, the old SHG bank linkage is outdated, it looks like. To me, though it has been a product called cash credit limit, no one understands that it's a cash credit limit. I'll be surprised if people in NRLM understands the SHG bank linkage. Across India, it is supposed to be a cash credit limit product, but it is still treated as a term loan by most facilitating agencies and the SHGs. So I think, this idea of 3 lakh loan or need-based lending, I think, this is the old basic. 30 years ago, we talked about loans must be as per the need. And the SHG members need a package of services and not just loan. They need insurance, they need savings, different types of savings. They need also remittances. So I think the innovations that we have in the form of SKDRDP, in the form of Srinidhi, in the form of a few other such financial institutions, Sangamitra Rural Financial Services, FWWB has done some very interesting work. Currently, they are now financing FPOs. I think, Dan Foundation has had some interesting experience in financing. So I think, from a financial inclusion point of view, I think a lot has been achieved. But adequacy of the loan or the financial services, timeliness, I think still seems to be a challenge. So I would really feel that the National Rural Livelihood Mission should call for some kind of a policy dialogue on what are the products and services that are needed for the SHGs of this age, where the system has matured, the needs are have evolved, and we must really look at how those needs can be met more innovatively. The business correspondent model, for example, all the SHG federations in the country can perform the role of a business correspondent. Srinidhi kind of entities can come up in a big way. So I think the possibilities are unlimited with the kind of foundation that has been laid in terms of the SHGs and their federations. Of course, we need to take care of some of those downsides that we earlier talked about in terms of governmentalization of the SHGs, which has its own downsides, which can lead to maybe some corruption, which can lead to some data manipulation. So I think data integrity, maybe we need to have use of blockchain technology for ensuring high quality data usage. And of course, why in India 100% of the SHGs can't be digitized? If we have a crore SHGs, the SHGs and their members all should be on a digital platform, and they should be on these information exchanges. So I think that's something that one need to look at. So what I would now do is, there are a couple of important questions that have come up. So I would like to first request Smita ji to take a couple of minutes to respond. Are there some good examples where civil society and government work together? That's one question. Second question is, and I think I request all the three panelists to address these questions. Second is, what is it that can be done for sustainability of the self-help group system in the country where it is today? Smita?
Thank you. I think, CS, this question has also come up in the context of North and Central India. And I think it's important for us to note that, North and Central India, with great efforts, are still continuing to be 11% and 10%, in terms of SHG bank linkage in the country. So together they are only 21%. So I'm not surprised that people are asking that question, and thank you for asking that. But the important thing is, whatever we talk about SHGs having grown, the fact that they grew in the South continues to be important. It's the same bankers. What I'm surprised about is, it's the same banker who might behave differently in Varanasi and behave differently in Andhra. Because these are all banks are the same. So how come even today in 2021, banks in Varanasi are telling the Sampark team on the ground that we will not even open your accounts, because the moment we open our accounts, open your SHG's accounts, floodgates open, then they ask for loans, and then they will all go defunct. And all go bad. So that kind of fear still exists in the North, in the central areas. And this is something we have to reckon with. Fear might have gone in the southern region, but it's still very, very palpable there. And then when you come to sustainability, we have two interesting, very contradictory lessons. One is that the older an SHG is, the more mature it is, the more impactful it is, the more the women can take better decisions, and the better it survives. The other is, the older an SHG is, without support, the chances of it being overtaken by a leader, or the chances of it getting defunct, are very high. What is the pivotal factor is the capacity building and the support of an SHG PI, like yourselves, like Srinidhi, or like SK DRP. Now, 18.3% of SHGs under NRLM have received any training on concepts and management. 3% have received financial literacy training, and 6% have received livelihoods training. Now, if this is the national average, then you can imagine what it is in the north and the central region. I've not got the, the regional differentiation of this, but chances are that that's very low. So capacity building is extremely important, and keeping NGOs alive. In 2011, 2013, the government threw out the baby with the bathwater. Literally just took over all the space that NGOs have and planted their own organizations there. They do not do the kind of capacity building that NGOs are capable of doing because they have targets. So that's the question about sustainability. It's a long answer, but we need to do more capacity building. We need to bring back organizations that can do that. And the second thing is about the harmony between NGOs and the government. In fact, the harmony between government and government has itself been problematic. I remember 6 years ago, while going into the field, in Maharashtra, MAVIM, which is a women and child development, organization, and Women's Development Corporation set up by them, and the Rural Development and Panchayati Raj Initiative, which is NRLM, they were competing. And today, now they have forged links. So you can get convergence and harmony with the government CS in two ways. One is by achieving scale, and only then is the NRLM interested in an NGO and interested in harmonization. And second is by lending them your numbers. Because if you tell them, okay, this is what we do, and all these groups will go onto the NRLM website, then suddenly the government is interested. So scale and numbers are very, very important, and then raising your own funds. The NGO has to be very capable of raising its own funds for capacity building. And I remember Al Fernandez saying this to me 30 years ago when we were just starting SHGs. I was telling him, we're not getting money. And he said, Smita, you have to get money from elsewhere. NGOs have to be independent of government money. It's still very, very valid. If we are independent and if we are at scale, we can negotiate with NRLM and the government. Otherwise, you can say bye to any kind of harmonization. You're muted, CS.
Smita, yeah. So, Manjunatha ji, any quick remarks, points?
Yeah. Thank you.
I think you are a living example of harmony between government and
I will take a couple of minutes.
Please, yeah.
One on the issue of harmony between different institutions. Madam was telling that building up scale would actually facilitate you to have better harmony. That's not correct. Building up scale actually brings in competition, brings in envy. That's a very, very, very intriguing thing actually. So, I mean, as long as you treat poor people as the constituency, this is bound to happen. So we need to agree to the fact that, I'm speaking of from the NGO perspective, we need to agree to the fact that the policies are framed by the government and governmental institutions. So we have to, in that framework and in this canvas, we need to work. So the NGOs, if they want to really perform in the field of, development, they need to have patience. They need to first agree to the government, and they have to work with the government and say yes to the government, and then they have to create a space for themselves. Otherwise, it's normally not given. So in fact, even in case of SKDIDPs, the SHG is getting financial, interest subvention from NRLM. We are not in even a single contract with NRLM. We are not even in a single contract with NRLM. We have got the interest subvention by going to the panchayat and uploading our SHGs in their Panchatantra site, and then also linking them with the bank. We are able to get the best interest subvention to our groups. So we need to work hard, we need to be patient, and we need to be understanding of the dominant role of the government and the banks, and we have to create our own space in that. Actually, it requires a lot of patience. And second is, like you said, we need to have technology to answer all the questions. SKDP today has got complete database of every member. One single rupee transaction with the member. If a member is not attending the group meeting, or if a member is not attending the federation meeting, that is recorded and it's already available to us on the database. So this complete database is a very strong point. Now, talking about North and Central India, I think now, for example, SKDDP has set up an international incubation center for mentoring NGOs to take up the role of a BCBF, for taking up, a higher role in the SHG promotion. So I think we can come together, use our strong points, and then work under a single platform, this thing, so that we are able to create more institutions. I mean, I don't think it is good for SKDDP to go and work in Maharashtra or Bihar. I think we should create institutions there who can replicate SKDDP model. And we have got a lot more things on SKDDP model. It's not just finance, not just enterprise, but also on social upbeing and social well-being, education, health, insurance, and those kind of things. So I think we must be given a platform at the national level to actually work with similar institutions across. And SKDDP is ready to accept this cudgel. We are in fact ready to lead them to the bank also. We are even ready to lead the smaller NGOs to the bank for a BCBF kind of arrangement. So I think there's a lot that can we do in this sphere.
Thank you. Lovely, Dr. Manjunatha. Thank you so much.
You are patient. Thank you.
GVS, do you have any last comments? If you don't make also, it's fine.
Yeah, just quickly, I think this model based on social capital ultimately has to be self-financing. I think we cannot go on spending government money on a regular basis. Maybe after some time, I think we need to dispense with that. The second point is, I think a credit scoring model for giving bank linkage or finance, I think very, very key, because that only will ensure some sustainability to the meaning. So the thirdly, it is the digitalization of entire transactions, what Dr. Manjunatha was telling. I think that should be sufficient.
Wonderful. That's really, you are spot on, GVS. I think, you really said it. Self-financing, I love that. I think this government funding all these staff of state rural livelihood missions, I think makes it corrupt, makes it inefficient, ineffective. So I really want to thank all the three panelists. Wonderful presentation. And being very candid in sharing their experience, their innovations, their challenges. So I'll take maybe for 3-4 minutes. Priyambada is suggesting we close at 11:05. So I'll take 3 minutes to quickly summarize this wonderful, discussion we have had with very thoughtful, experienced professionals. No one in this panel has less than 30 years experience. So, and if my experience is added, we are 100 plus years of experience in the panel. So number one, I think the SHG movement has matured. We have arrived, including the federations. So why not universalization of digitalization? I think everyone is talking about using digital technology. The jam is there. So the Jandan, the Aadhaar, the mobile technology, every SHG member seems to use the mobile. So that's the first point. Second, I think we need to work with the banking fraternity to make best use of the cash credit model and any other financial innovations there are. So maybe there is a need for a national level task force to look at, what are the services needed for the SHG system in today's context. So maybe I think between Access, APMAS, Manjunatha ji, Srinidhi, NRLM, we can take an initiative to come up with something like that. Larger loans is the need of the hour. Enterprise financing and not, I think the next session will dwell into it, but I don't think we should really hesitate and stop at 5,000, 50,000 loans. I think the SHG federations are there and have arrived, 400,000 of them, but they need capacities and capital. Maybe the community investment fund, maybe they need to have a cadre of community resource persons. Or in the Myradas model, they call it as the CRPs that are there who work in the community managed resource center. So that's, I think, is something. And these federations need to be autonomous. I think we talked about it quite a bit. Social capital, particularly in the North, East, and Central India, more social capital need to be built. I think that time has come to relook and redesign the role of NGOs and who can support matured SHGs and federations, also in the enterprise promotion space. I feel just one last slide I had, which I didn't show at the previous thing. So this is, I think, is the need of the hour. Self-regulation for sustainability. We need to have bookkeeping system. We need to have financial literacy, MIS, digitization. I think GVS talked about grading on an ongoing basis, or credit scoring. We need some kind of effective system of statutory compliances. Also, democracy in these SHGs and federations. The leadership cannot be selected by the employees of the state rural livelihood missions, but they must be elected by the members. So I love this idea, and I want to end this session on this note that self-financing and credit scoring, so if we are able to use technology platform, and if we are able to really look at some kind of a digital platform for scoring the SHGs for financing or providing financial services as per the need, and not a kind of a equal distribution kind of a system, so that they can also make best use of their savings. So I think, Priyamada, I kept to my promise of stopping at 11:05. So at the end, thank you very much, Smita. Thank you very much, Manjunatha ji. Thank you very much, GVS, for your wonderful, wonderful presentations. We have had a stellar panel, and I am pleased and delighted to have taken the responsibility to moderate.
Thank you, CS.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelists, for highlighting these important issues and for such forward-looking prescriptions. And like Reddy sir mentioned, Access would be happy to host a follow-up roundtable meeting with NRLM and the other stakeholders, and to take forward today's discussion. And thank you again to all the panelists, and thank you, Reddy sir, for such deft moderation. We will now take a quick break and reconvene in another 5 minutes for our next session on financing challenges in graduating women SHG members to entrepreneurs.
Where are our mementos, Priyamada? Where are the mementos? Anyway, good. I think the virtual platform has been very good and maybe more economical.
And I think the memento will be the next roundtable conference when we actually take this forward.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. And I request all the panelists to join the next 2 sessions as well.
Sure.
Thank you.